4, 3, 2 seconds to go. Cool. Good morning, everybody. Good morning and welcome to Books and Friends. This is the Books and Friends TV. I'm DAVIDE SCIALPI. Great to have you here. Great to have you on board. Welcome on board for another super special and interactive conversation, super special Q&A with another super special guest daughter today. Joining me now directly from London, United Kingdom, a super international consultant, super coach, super specialized in all the things people management, leadership and management, employees engagement. She's the founder of Vantage Points Consultancy Ltd. She's been working as a chief people officer, chief human resource officer as for many companies, many super brands like UK Home Office, former company, as well as FDM Group. She's now out with her newest book, latest book called Vantage Points. She here in the Books and Friends room with us for this new episode of the Books and Friends TV, Mrs. Paula Leach. Good morning, Paula. Happy Thursday and welcome to Books and Friends.
Hi there. It's lovely to be here. What a lovely introduction. Thank you.
Thanks to you. Thanks for being with us. Thanks for joining us. Super fascinating to catch up. It is an honor and a pleasure to have you here for this new episode of the Books and Friends TV. Together with you, Paula, we're going to get more about all the things leadership management, people management, human resource practices in the light of COVID-19 pandemic, as well as on your latest work called Vantage Points, published by Lead. It's a super book, a book that I found very useful, very pragmatic, very concrete, full of examples, new perspectives, fresh ideas, but above all, also full of illustrations, full of visual frameworks that can allow anyone to understand, figure out what to do and how to do it when it comes to leadership, to get it done right and to get results. So the first question that I wanted to ask, so let's get straight into the conversation. The first question that I wanted to ask, I've been fascinated by your way of writing. So clarity and clearness are the words that can describe better in a very effective way this book. You go straight to the point, probably because this is what I got. Your experience, your practical experience comes up through the book, and this makes the book very concrete and pragmatic. In a different way from other, compared to other traditional books about leadership that are full of words, but they never get down to the solutions, the practical solutions that we get when it comes to organizational, situation, organizational challenges in terms of leadership. So first question that I wanted to ask is this, is a curiosity. What has brought you to become an author? What has motivated, inspired you to publish this new book? And tell us more about this new book, a little bit of behind the scenes, the research journey about this book.
Yeah, thank you. You're right, it is a bit different to lots of other things that are out there in terms of leadership and purposely, really. So in your introduction, you shared that I've been working in the people space. I've been in that space for over 25 years in lots of different settings. I've worked with leaders in, shop floor environments, blue collar environments, white collar executives. I've sort of worked across the board, different functions. And there is some central truths and similarities between the actual essence of what leadership is that I've noticed in that time. And I've been a leader myself. I've worked at the executive level. So I've noticed and struggled and challenged and kind of worked my way through it myself. And about, I want to say probably 3-4 years ago, I just started recognizing that there was a collection of things that I was generally saying when I was talking to different leaders, when we were talking about things that I was finding useful, but also that were coming up repeatedly when I was coaching leaders in the workplace. So I started to kind of put these things together, and I kept saying to people, there's a book in this, there's a book in this. And the other thing I would say about the practicality is that I'm a big whiteboard person. So whenever I would be coaching somebody or talking with somebody, I'd always be up at the whiteboard because I think quite visually. And so I'd be kind of making sense of things. And I suppose the other piece to it is that leadership can get very, very complicated. We can be very reactive. There's always too much to do. And I'm always kind of interested in this fundamental question, which is, what is the point? It's my favorite question in the world. What's the point? And so I kind of was pulling it back to that. And so eventually I got round to putting this all together. And I know we'll touch on it, but there is a sort of a central almost equation or backbone to the book, which really talks about and simplifies the role of the leader and hopefully provides practical clarity. So just to say in finality about it, I think that books on leadership generally come in two categories.
Yeah.
There's the brilliant books written by researchers and people who are doing fantastic research and empirical research and testing things in the academics. And they bring such a rich picture, but sometimes they can be a bit hard to read or think about how I apply that. And then on the other hand, there's the wonderful stories of CEOs or senior leaders who talk about what they did. And they're inspiring and they're interesting and they're fantastic. My book is neither of those things. It sits in the middle. It really is a practical handbook, if you like, almost like a return to leadership. What is the job of a leader? As I have observed it and I have done it. And how do I help people bring themselves back to that? So I almost think it's a bit like a return to leadership.
Yep.
And it tries to simplify the complex.
Very interesting stuff. Very fascinating stuff. So the role of a leader, you mentioned the role of a leader, this return to leadership, and I think that is quite correct, because we need a new leadership. We need a different kind of style compared to the kind of leadership style that we always been over the course of the years, especially after this pandemic, or as a consequence of this pandemic. So the question that I wanted to ask is, when we get into managerial stuff, when we get into stuff like this, we need in my opinion, we need always to be focused on learning. Focusing mainly on the basics, on the fundamentals. So the question that I wanted to ask goes to the leadership basics. So essentially, leadership. What's leadership? So what it is not, and what does it mean to be a leader of an organization today, or a leader in general? Because you can be a leader also a political party, or as an entrepreneur, or a freelancer, or an expert. You gotta have leadership skills and you gotta have leadership competencies, because otherwise you don't get results.
Yeah, so, well, I always think of leadership as a practice.
Yeah.
I don't think it's a job.
No.
I think it's a set of actions and a set of ways of being. And you're absolutely right. You know, leadership is not a position on an organizational chart. And one of the things I say at the beginning of the book is, leadership is a choice, but it's not a choice by you. It's a choice by whether or not people follow you. It's a follower choice. And people follow people for certain reasons. And if you really look at leaders who we generally would kind of, say, oh, they're amazing leaders, it's always the same name. It would be Nelson Mandela, it might be, Martin Luther King, or, whatever. Yeah. There is something about those people which is nothing to do with them. It's to do with a higher purpose and a higher mission. Yeah. And that individual is playing their part to curate, if you like, an outcome. So I think the first thing to say about leadership is it's practice. The second thing is to say that it is not about the leader. In fact, it's completely the opposite. It's about everybody else. And then what I found myself kind of coming back to over and over again was, when you think about the complexity of the working world now, there's so much going on, whether it's technological change, whether it's the change that we've seen in the last year and a half or so. These changes were already coming, they're accelerating. We're moving from a world of task-based leadership to human leadership. Yeah. And what that requires is a humanistic-based approach to thinking about how you create movement from A to B. So that's what I described. The job of the leader is to move something from A to B. Oh, yeah. And that could be a huge transformation, a multi-year, multi-million-dollar transformation. You could be leading hundreds of thousands of people. You could be running a retail outlet, and you get from the beginning of the day to the end of the day, and you make a number of sales. It doesn't really matter. The principle is that your job is to move something from A to B, and what you do is you create clarity and you get out of the way. And by that, what I mean is creating clarity is making sure that clarity exists. Everybody knows where we're going, why, what the work is. And, once you've defined that, and you have to keep redefining it, it's not a one-off thing, you're constantly looking at it, but your job is to make sure that clarity exists.
Mhm.
Co-creation is best, not directive, but that's your job. And the other job is to get out of the way and create space for people to, because as long as you have clarity, people will fill the space with their brilliant creativity, their ideas, their problem solving, all of those things. And you only harness that creativity and that individual, contribution and the teamwork and all of that if you've got you need both.
Yeah, that's very interesting. I totally agree with you. And I read a couple of days ago a research from McKinsey, and this research says so. A good CEO needs to create an atmosphere where people can be realistic about a business situation, instead of hiding facts that are hard to swallow. So, and according to the world top businesses that have been in survey, the key skills needed now more than ever are leadership, critical thinking, project management, adaptability, digital skills, empathy, and creativity. So you are on that. So when you say clarity is about, you cannot hide facts. So you gotta be realistic. You gotta communicate. You gotta give a little bit of direction. And when you say getting out of the way, you say, in my opinion, I don't know, I'd like to get your thoughts on this. You say creativity, right? And creativity is what makes difference today. If you want to differentiate your company from others, you want to create a brand when it comes to the competition, you got to be creative. It's the only one thing on which you can leverage today, in my opinion, to differentiate yourself from others. What do you think about it?
Yeah, so your point around the sort of the leadership attributes, and clarity being not always what everybody would like to hear, but I think what that goes back to is, the thematic around transactional analysis. So, hierarchies in the past have kind of created a dynamic that sometimes can feel like parent and child. I'm in charge, I might not even consciously, but I might withhold information from you. I know things because I'm at a more senior level. I have access to information. You don't know those things. I can control this organization's situation. That, that isn't the way forward. The way forward is transparency. The way forward, shared problem solving. And the way forward is openness about genuine challenges and reasons, because the solution always exists within the team. And people also will resist things less the more that they're brought in and know about things, and they will be more predisposed to, share their discretionary effort and their ideas, if you're demonstrating that shared challenge. So Brené Brown will always say in her kind of work that clarity is kind. And, sometimes that means saying hard messages as well. But do you know what the truth of this is? And I know this from experience, is if you've got something hard to say, the longer you take to say it and the less clear you are about saying it, the harder it is to say and the harder it is to receive. So a leader has to be able to have that resilience, but also that sense of almost vulnerability that I'm sharing something with you, but I don't know where that's going to go. And it might make me feel uncomfortable too, because I don't know all the answers. So I think that when I talk about getting out of the way in the book, I split it into kind of two categories. One is that to get out of the way, you have to be human. You have to understand humans, and you have to understand yourself, and you have to do work on yourself, and you have to be able to engage at a very human level and understand motivation and behavior, and almost, you don't have to be a psychologist, but you have to be interested in the psychology of people and the difference of people, and the fact that how you're experienced is not necessarily how you intend. All of those types of things, that self-awareness. So all of that helps to build up your ability to be vulnerable, to be clear, to be able to engage with people in an adult to adult environment. In terms of the clarity side of it, I find one of the biggest problems that people will talk to me about as a leader is, we sort of agreed everything that we were going to do, and then, all the decisions are still coming up to me, and I'm still caught up in all this transactional work. And what that points to me is that, well, the clarity isn't strong enough then, and the permissions aren't strong. So there's a cultural side to that, and there is a clarity side to that. So it is around making sure that there is a really, really clear understanding of people's parameters and also accountability. So, when we've created these parameters, with creativity and autonomy comes accountability. We do expect people to take that accountability and not be passive, but to actually be part of that. And there's a model right at the back of the book. You talked about the pictures in the book. There's pictures in every section, and there's a model at the back of the book that sort of differentiates really between what I would call push leadership and magnetic leadership. And when I talk about push leadership, I don't mean directive command and control leadership. I'm not discussing that particularly in this book. What I'm discussing is, I think, a trap that so many of us fall into. Leadership is really, really difficult, and you have to be so conscious. And so push leadership is when we're reactive, we're caught up in the day-to-day, and for anything to happen, it requires us to make it. We have to ask you to do that. We have to check up on that. We have to keep that plate spinning. Magnetic leadership is when I've created this sense of clarity and sense of autonomy within my teams. That's what I do. I create clarity and autonomy. And instead of me having to push out this work, people are drawn to that central, orbit, if you like, and they become very proactive within that. And we're sitting within the same orbit. And that to me is the difference. And that becomes a virtuous cycle then, because the more of that you create, the more space you create for yourself to create even more of a systemic view.
So my understanding is this: when you don't have clarity, when you don't practice clarity and getting out of the way, you get into a kind of push form of leadership, right? Correct me if I'm wrong. And the other ways around, if you practice clarity and get it out of the way, you get into a kind of a magnetic form of leadership, right?
Yeah. And it becomes easier. I mean, I think there's this idea that, I'll coach a lot of people who are sitting at the sort of that sort of steps, sort of executive level, -1, -2, -3, that sort of, I'm looking up and I don't know whether I want to go there, because that just looks really hard. It looks really political. It looks really busy. Looks like it's going to take over my life. I sort of look at that and I think, well, that isn't what happened to me when I was an executive. And in actual fact, what the business is looking for you from as executive is the systemic, your thinking, your ability to inspire other people. He's looking for those things. And that requires you to have actual calm and space, not chaos, frantic and busyness and running from one meeting to the next. So we have a duty, I think, to challenge that, even if we can't see it, and try and create that sort of for ourselves. And I actually use an analogy, and when I present about these themes, I have a lovely picture of a butterfly. And I think of these two themes, creating clarity, getting out of the way, as the wings of a butterfly. And I choose a butterfly because of its symmetry. So you have to do both. You can't have one more than the other. A butterfly has complete symmetry. It doesn't fly by flapping one wing and then flapping the other. It flaps both together. And actually, what I've tried to do, we talked at the beginning about how the book is tried to be really practical, because I've lived this, right? I've lived it alongside people as well. And there's a section right at the back that brings it to life and helps people to think about, how do I do this then? If this is the idea, how do I bring that into my practice every day? And there's 12 different tools in there. Some might work for some, others might work for others, but ideas to just be conscious, aware and intentional about the unique impact that you are having as a leader.
Cool, cool. We're very fascinating stuff. So in the book, you talk about the fact that if you want to get clarity, get it out of the way, you gotta go through kind of different perspective, kind of points, angles, perspectives. So this you call them Vantage points. Vantage points. So tell us more about this. So what is a vantage point, and what kind of vantage points we have to get through? How many vantage points we have to go through?
Yeah. So the title of the book is based on these vantage points, and the idea behind this. So the definition of a vantage point is a place where you can see a lot of things. That's the definition of it.
Mm-hmm.
And the way I sort of think about leadership position, wherever you are, you've effectively got the keys to the castle. You can see everything. You've got the ability to stand in different perspectives and look at the work and look at the way people are working, and look at the way you can support the endeavor to move from A to B by creating clarity and getting out of the way. You have, and I put them in 5 categories, 5 different vantage points that you can be aware of. And we're all going to have preferences and differences about, where we might stand and what we might, choose as a perspective. But it's about being aware that you have the keys to the castle. You can look from lots of different ways and gain information, observation to help you to steer the organization, to steer your team. And those vantage points are very quickly, one is in amongst, which means it's almost like back to the floor. You're doing the job. You go and actually experiencing it. You're right in amongst it.
You're in.
You're in it, yeah. So say for example, you work in manufacturing, you might go into the packing section and pack for a day and just talk to people and just do the job and realize that it really makes your back hurt or whatever it is. You could still do that if you're in a call center. You go, I mean, lots of leaders, who go and do a stint on the call center and just realize
on the job.
Yeah. So that you've got but you're there as an observer. You're there to observe and understand. The second one is is to the side and around, which means you're still looking at that sort of level, but you are observing. It's probably a bit like the philosophy of management by walking about, but it's, being able to really look and notice what's happening
That's very
at an operational level. The third one is from high above. So this is really where the keys to the castle come in. No one else gets these keys, and you can choose to bring people up there and help look with you. But this is the executive meeting that you go to that no one else goes to, and you see the data across the organization. You have a vantage point of how things work. You can see systems working. The fourth one is from high up and out and beyond. So this is when you start to look outside. This is the reading that you're doing. This is the conferences that you're attending. This is your network. This is looking at the competition, and it's having that perspective of what's happening around and about.
The big picture, the vision.
The bigger picture, exactly. And then the fifth one is inside. This one gets forgotten. But it is a genuine vantage point that you have, which is the ability to make sense of everything that's going on around and having enough time to spend sense making, so that when you create an intervention or you're communicating or you're making a decision, you're doing so having had the time to make sense of it and in a calm way, and checking in with yourself and your gut feel, your experience. It's all valid. The 2 vantage points that I think leaders miss the most is high up, out and beyond, the wider systemic view. And inside. Because it feels self-indulgent to not take that meeting because I'm going to spend time thinking and processing what I've been focusing on. But generally speaking, the idea is not that you are cycling through these things or that you're you're consciously aware that you have these vantage points available to you, and that you really have the opportunity to use them to help inform how you create clarity and how you get out of the way. And so like a sort of a multiplier effect, really, it's like a sort of a, you know, opportunity to supercharge what you do and to notice, am I, you know, when was the last time I did actually go out and just do the job of the people that I'm leading? I need to, there may be another person who grew up in an organization, who came from that job, who totally loves that and does that a lot, but isn't as comfortable, you know, in the executive meeting, taking that systemic. So it's being aware of the keys to the castle you have, and that's your job. Your job is to use those things to perform these two key aspects.
Very interesting stuff. So different perspectives, different angles, different trajectories to understand and get information that could be valuable to take better decisions, leadership decisions. This is more or less my understanding of what Vantage Points are all about. And I'm very fascinating about this Vantage Point, because you like you play different kind of roles if you go through them, because sometimes you are like a coach manager of a football club, because you are, as you said, to the side and around. Some others, in other cases, you are like Big Brother. No, you go, you see everything from from high out and from high above, and also when you get inside, you become like an analyst, like a psychologist, because you got to understand the needs and motivations of the people, and that's very interesting. And I'd like to ask you, in your opinion, you said most of the times leaders lack or miss 2 points, but what's the most crucial point, in your opinion? What's the most crucial vantage point we need to cultivate, go through, walk through?
I actually, I don't think one is any more important than the other. To be honest with you, I think
the most critical
value,
one.
yeah, I think the reason my favorite vantage point is the inside one is because what I do believe is that really great leadership starts with very strong self-awareness and an understanding of what you are there to do. So you're not there to do the work because that's what everybody else is doing. Your contribution is to inspire the collective agency of others. That's one of the phrases that I use in the book. And so you do need time and space to be able to make sense of that and to understand deeply, which moves you're going to make. And to be curious about how that feels and what you're still learning and growing and doing. And I think it's that growth part of the inside work that is really, really important. I mean, the bottom line is leadership is human. You cannot get away from
humanity,
doing work on yourself. And you'll see this when we might touch on it a bit later, but fundamentally I believe it's really, really important. If you are a leader helping and supporting and working with other human beings, you need to understand human nature, and that starts with ourselves. So in that sense, I think the inside one is just so important. I think it's missed because many leaders are sort of too busy, and it's the self-care bit, it's the bit that gets left, it's the bit that isn't urgent. It's important but not urgent. And I also think as we've moved from sort of task-based leadership of the past into humanistic leadership of the future, there is a generation of leaders who have not got lots of role models of people who have prioritized this and have worked this way. The next generation of people coming through are expecting to relate to their leaders in a very humanistic sense. And they're expecting from their workplaces to be part of a more holistic part of their life. There's so much research on this, the differences, particularly now coming through with Gen Z, etc. And the other thing I think is important to say about that move from task-based to humanistic leadership is this was enabled by technology. So the technological revolution is often described as being about technology. For leaders and people in the workplace, it's about people, because the technology, AI, all of those things completely takes away so much of the task-based work. But what's left for us, and I think this is brilliant, but what's left for us is human work, the human to machine interface and the human to human interface. The opportunity for that, to embrace diversity, to embrace people's ideas, is wonderful. The leadership challenge is so much more complicated and different, and requires us to think quite deeply. And what I would just say, you touched on the pandemic at the beginning in your introduction, and I've been doing some research following on from the book with a number of different leaders talking about leadership in the 21st century. And the pandemic has accelerated this, but it's also brought to the fore a real worry for leaders who are, genuinely sitting there thinking, wow, I am having to bring myself into the workplace in a way I never really had to before. And you know what? I don't even know the answers to some of these questions myself. And so that inside, it's important, and it's important work. But no one should feel, I think it's exciting. I think it's a brilliant new age for us. And my final thing I would say, I make this point right at the end of the book about this shift, which is, we've spent the last 100 to 200 years going through this big, massive industrial revolution, changes, etc. And we've been through the mechanization of physical work. We've now gone through the mechanization of knowledge work and task-based work. It's got us back full circle to the freedoms of being able to work on creativity, innovation, social connection. And these are the very things that have meant that the human race has been so successful. So we've come back full circle. We're living through an age of work where we're sort of freed up to do those things that are the very nature of human beings and the differentiator. So I think that if you're a leader in today's world, my sort of, what I'm throwing out there with this book is two things. One is a very practical guide that helps you into leadership and makes sense.
Solution.
Secondly, it's a challenge to say, rise up, because we've got such a brilliant opportunity.
So we got to work on that. And the people, new generations of people want meaningful conversations, meaningful relationships, a meaningful place to work. As a consequence, we need to give, and we need to practice meaningful leadership. Otherwise, we will never get through it. We will never get where they want to be, because if we don't go in the same direction, at a certain point, it's going to be hard to survive, in my opinion. And I'd like to ask you this stuff, talking of women's leadership, because we have a glass ceiling that we need to break, and we are trying to do that years after years, but we're still far from the optimum. So in your opinion, from your perspective as a leader, as a manager, as a consultant, as an expert in the field, what are the key characteristics, qualities that a woman mass should have to become a leader or lead with confidence today?
Oh, I love this. I do so much work. I do a lot of work with women. I'm, and what I find really fascinating about this conversation is that we are having a conversation about women and men. And in actual fact, I think what's happening and has been accelerated in the last year, and it's what we've just talked about really, is a rebalancing between the feminine and the masculine in our working lives. And I think the reason why we've been on this journey, which feels like it's been such a struggle, and we've not really made such great progress as thought we would with women's leadership. I can remember having my children. My children are now 12 and 15. When I had my children, it was the first time that I really realized, oh gosh, this is a bit different for me.
Yep.
And I remember thinking, right, I need to do things to make this so that my children don't understand these stories I'm telling them. That when they're both girls, when they get into the workplace, this all feels alien to them. This is over. And it won't be over for them. You know, my eldest daughter's 15. She's going to be in the workplace in less than 10 years. And I don't see some of these changes happening quickly enough. And it's because we're trying to fit women into an environment which has a weighting towards the masculine energy. You know, whether that is the way that meetings are run, whether it's the working hours, whether it's sort of cultures in organizations, whether it's that focus on profit and hard statistics and hard outcomes versus, you know, sustainable care and impact, those types of things. So what I'm interested in, and I have noticed over a period of time, is it's not necessarily about men and women. It's actually about designing work and workplaces that are rebalanced to have more of a yin and a yang balance of the feminine and the masculine. And I think some of the things we've been talking about humanistic leadership, about vulnerability, around involving everybody, you know, and this isn't men and women. This is feminine and masculine types of energy. There's many men who absolutely dying for a world where there's more of this so they can thrive and not just survive. And I think it's not about replacing the mass, it's about a rebalance. And I feel because that's been out of balance, our experience has been very difficult for many people who tend to be more feminine characteristic. And in the future, we will have to rebalance this because things have come into our working worlds that weren't there before. Health, well-being, diversity and inclusion, environment, sustainability, care for our broader community rather than just, you know, the profit. And I think because of that rebalance, I think we will create the conditions for women and men to thrive and therefore to rebalance the representation in the workplace. So that's my view on it. And I was actually speaking to a group of women yesterday about the book. I had a webinar session with some senior leaders and women. And one of the things I said to them was, this is the moment to challenge them. You know, even if you can't see it around you, just be it. Because that's what we can do in our generation is, and it really is that magnetic leadership style enables everybody, it enables that rebalance of masculine and feminine energy. So I don't know if that makes sense, but that's the way I've come to make sense of this over time.
Very fascinating stuff. So question, in your opinion, how important do you think it is for a company to have diversity and inclusion within their values? Because probably this could be a kind of, you know, solution to solve the problems. What do you think?
So what I believe is, yes, it's important the company has it as values, but what's important is the people in the company genuinely have it as their values. I've seen lots of companies that say the right thing, you know, but the issue is you have to and this is where, you know, we might come back to the inside work. I mean, after the issues last year, after George Floyd's death, you know, there were leaders having to confront conversations in workplaces that they'd never really had to confront before. And I think there were people who found it really uncomfortable and ran away from it. There were people who kind of embraced it and started doing reading they'd never done before to understand it further. And I'm not judging anyone for it. I think it has brought forwards this absolute reality that curiosity about how other people are and how other people see and experience the world and what they can bring, and that might look really different to the way we might bring something.
Mm-hmm.
Genuine curiosity about that is a deep-rooted value that cultivate on an ongoing basis, and it's the leaders and the people in the organization that need to feel it. And sometimes that can be separate from saying it, an organizational statement. The leaders that do this best are the people that are just genuinely, through every fiber in their body, genuinely curious, vulnerable, open to learning, interested, fascinated, you know, humble.
Cool.
And so it's yes, it's absolutely a values question, but this is why leadership is so personal.
Mm-hmm. Cool. And probably we need to walk these values, and we need to, as you said right at the beginning, we need to get them. So if we don't get them, we will never get through. And I'd like to ask you this stuff. I have a curiosity, and I'm super curious about this. So pandemic has literally changed the way we work. And probably if they, I don't know, I'm just doing these considerations. If they change the way we work, will definitely also literally also change the way we manage people, the way we lead people. So what's your take on the future of work? So how is going to evolve in the next future? So what do we expect from the company's organization when it comes to organizational models and leadership styles? So a little bit of on this. What do you think? Your take on
Yeah,
this?
yeah. I think the conversation about the future of work is at present being dominated by,
Yeah.
will we all be in office buildings in the future or not? And I'm a bit less interested in that. I think, and I also feel we sort of don't need to control it as much as that. We just lived through complete uncontrol about this. I think, it's a bit like if you dig a hole, the sand will fill up the hole. It'll fill up whatever space there is. And my sort of feeling is, we've created a bit more openness about how people work. I think, definitely people will come together and work together because we're social beings.
Yeah.
But the ability to have a bit more flexibility to run and live your life, great, because we just proved we can do it. Communication is going to be absolutely key to make sure that we've got people who are doing the things that work for them, but are also considering what their stakeholders need from them and what other people need from them when they're making that decision. So creating the space for people to communicate around that, I think, is a bigger issue rather than trying to create rules for people to be in the office this many days a week or that many days. I just, I think it's that. But the big winner, I think, out of this situation is productivity.
Yeah.
Because when everybody was in the office, I think, we probably got a bit lazy about productivity. We think we're productive because everybody's here.
Yeah.
And it would go back to my point around clarity. If people are working slightly differently in different locations, in different setups, I mean, God, look at the talent we can now access. We're not limited to our geographic area. We can build amazing teams, brilliant talent all around the world. But the need for that laser sharp clarity and everybody to be brought into it and feel the purpose of it, and to have that sort of self-starting proactive nature to create the connections, that's the winner situation. And I would sort of suggest that I think we had a possibly somewhat less than optimum view of looking at productivity in the past, because we looked at how full our offices were. Do we need all of those people? Do we not need all of those people? Can we resource differently, for the work that needs to get done? Definitely. So I think the organizations that are able to kind of go, right, let's get back. And again, there's a lot in the book that would take people there, right? Let's get back to basics. Instead of talking about whether people are in the office or not, or instead of sort of trying to recreate what we were doing, but in a virtual world, the fundamental question is, what is the work that needs to get done?
Yeah.
Who are we servicing? What do they need?
Yep.
What is the work that needs to get done? What is the outcome that we're reaching for? Why are we
Mhm.
doing it?
Mhm.
The rest will happen. The rest will be created and recreated around that. If that isn't done because we're around here trying to recreate all this detail, those organizations will lose and the talent will flock
Mhm.
to the organizations where they feel they can have a stake in being part of that sense of belonging. So
Sure.
I don't know if that really answers your question, but I'm just not that
Mhm.
interested in the conversation about whether people will be in the office 3 days a week or not.
Yeah.
Hybrid working, that's going to be what happens. It
Is
does.
it?
Got it.
Yeah,
But
totally.
hybrid working is lots of different things. What I'm interested in is get back to what's the work that needs to get done. Who are we serving? Why? And I think the rest will flow from there. We've got more tools available to us. We know more. We know so much from this year. It's brilliant. I mean,
Totally
it's
agree
been a
with you.
really difficult year. Changes are not, but the things that we can take from it for work, we've moved 10, 15 years in 3 months.
Totally agree with you. Totally agree with you. And it's very controversial because some people want to get back to work, some others want to continue to work remotely. Probably we go.
But they will, but they will.
Has
If you want to
always
go back to
been.
work, go back to work. It's sort of, and again, the communication is important.
Mhm.
To make sure that you're not doing just what you want, but that you're also think. So, I mean, I might want to work from home forever, but what if I've got some people in my team who really, really want to, learn from me and work with me, etc. I have to balance that. I
Yeah.
think we have to realize that we exist within a system. But other than that, I sort of think this sort of trying to come to some definition of hybrid working,
Yeah.
it's just going to be lots of different things.
Yeah. Totally agree with you. Totally agree with you. And I'm very curious about this is from the personal development point of view, standpoint. I'd like to ask you this. How do we realize if leadership is for us? I'd like to ask you this because most of the times people, some people and professionals, they at a certain point of their career, they become managers, but they never practiced leadership, right? So, and whether they are senior managers, CEOs, or junior managers. So how do we realize if this job, the leadership job is for, even if it's not a job, as you said, but the role, at the end of the day, we have the role and we have to practice that.
So this is such an important question. I'm really pleased you asked it. I do address it in the book. In fact, what I say in the book, there's a little troubleshooting question section at the end. I say in the book is someone says, "Oh, this all sounds really interesting, but I don't have time, to do this." And my answer to it is read the book again.
Mhm.
And if you still feel like that, perhaps leadership isn't for you. And
Mhm.
I think the issue is that, I've been doing organizational design for many years.
Mhm.
What I try to do in organizations is create almost like a three-dimensional
Mhm.
opportunity for people who want to be sole contributors to do so and achieve a degree of progression, status, growth, financial growth, whatever it is. Not everybody does want to do this work.
Yep.
And that many, many people are what I would describe accidental leaders. They want, and it's human nature. We want to grow. We want the status. We want the challenge. We want the money. We want the progression. Um, but with that, as soon as you start managing people, you have
Mhm.
to do this work that I describe in the book.
Yep.
And so if you don't want to do that work, if you don't want to have difficult conversations with people,
Mhm.
if you don't want to spend time really understanding yourself, if you don't want to um, move away from the technical discipline that perhaps you
Mhm.
started your career with and you really love,
Mhm.
um, because you won't be doing it. The higher up you get in the leadership, the higher up you get as a leader, the more you're spending dealing with people and money,
Yep.
and the less time
Relationship.
you're doing any of the technical specialism.
Yep.
And also, you will get to a point where you are responsible for something so broad
Yep.
that you don't know
Higher than you, broader than you.
Yeah, yeah, yeah. You should have brilliant people who have that expertise doing it, and you don't know. You are doing this work. You are doing this sort of sort of curating role, if you like. If you don't want to do that, then don't do it. But I think I think organisations do need to respond to this, because there's still many, many organisations that don't really have a route for someone to follow if they genuinely don't want to do leadership. But it's so much of an issue if somebody doesn't really choose it and want to do it, or they're not very good at it. It's not their thing, because then everybody who works in that organisation is affected. And your ability as an organisation to create that sense of sort of, discretionary effort and meaning and etc. Yeah, it's quite hard if someone hasn't got the ability to relate on a humanistic level. But I would say, equally, there's a piece here around expectation management as well, which is, helping people to understand and make that choice, but also recruiting people and training and developing them before they reach those things in the sort of people relational aspects that will be required of them when they get into that stage. Because also they might find they do really enjoy it and love it and can provide that balance. But that's not often done.
Cool. Very interesting stuff. Very fascinating point. So the work as we used to know it, quite frankly, is that leadership also, as we used to know it, quite frankly, is that. And we need to go for your ideas. We need to cultivate and walk your ideas, new, fresh ideas and perspectives about leadership. I got yesterday I was doing a little bit of research, and I got this survey from Oracle. They say 86% of Americans report a change in personality due to the pandemic. So when we get into this, we go straight to your point, because we need to understand human beings. So pandemic has changed a little bit the human beings, and we need to work on that, and we need to form people now. When it comes to leadership, we need massive training sessions and massive sessions of understanding, of analysis of the needs and the motivations of the people. In this way, probably we can get through, we can find the solutions when it comes to the world of work, the new world of work, and kind of organizational new kind of organizational models. So final question, Paula, has been, we got more or less at the end of this meaningful conversation. What books are you currently reading? What are the books you have planned to read, or the books who have inspired you the most for writing Vantage Points?
Yeah, so I've got 3 books I was going to share with you today. And one is the one I've just finished, one is the one I'm about to read, and one is my favorite book. And what I would say is that there is it's so important for anyone in leadership to read.
Yeah.
And they don't have to read, because they can listen to it. There's no excuse not to get out there and get curious and listen to great ideas and things that get you. So the book I've just finished, I don't know if you can see this, but this is Light is the New Black. It's not a new book, but it's by Rebecca Campbell. I absolutely adored this book. I read it in 24 hours. It is an inspiring book if you are interested in, the things that light you up and finding those things and purpose in life. So that I love. The book I'm about to read is this one. It's called The Progress Principle. It is by Teresa Amabile and Stephen Kramer. And I was going to say that on the back, the top blurb says, as leaders, we need to be sensitive and accountable for the impact we have on the quality of our people's work life. The best leaders create a path for people to be successful and motivated by their work. So I'm super excited to read this one. My favorite book I read in 2017, so it's quite recent, but it's A New Earth by Eckhart Tolle.
Okay.
I just absolutely, this helped me understand ego.
Hmm.
And I think any leader who really wants to rise up and elevate into
Hmm.
this sort of what's the point of what you're doing,
Hmm.
understanding your ego and
Hmm.
understanding other people's egos
Hmm.
so that you can survive and
Hmm.
thrive, perhaps in a world where not everyone around you has been on that enlightenment journey.
Hmm.
Because that will be true for many people of my generation of leaders. Um, Eckhart Tolle obviously wrote The Power of Now. I love this one. So
Cool.
they're my three top picks.
Very interesting readings, and I realized I was getting into this because most of the times it's a matter of egos, also leadership, and I when it comes to my leadership style, I decided to cut my ego and get through my purpose. So removing the ego, removing myself, my name, and just following the purpose. This is what I've done when it comes to my situation, my case. I can tell you that is working, and I feel more comfortable. I feel always always confident in any kind of situation because I have a purpose. My purpose is, building a meaningful world. So if something is meaningful, I'm gonna go through. If it's not meaningful, I'm not gonna go through. So this is very simple, but it's helping me a lot. And of course, we are at the end of the road, end of this journey. Final greetings, everybody. It's been an incredible conversation, incredible and meaningful conversation, meaningful Q&A. I do officially want to greet and thank Paula for being with us, for joining us, for helping us getting more about all the things, leadership, employees, engagement, human resource practices. Thank you very much indeed for this, Paula.
You're welcome. Thank you so much. Yeah, and this is the book, Vantage
Yeah,
Points. Yeah.
absolutely. Super fascinating to catch up. Super great to have you on board when it comes to Books and Friends. Your book, again, your book is now available on Amazon. It is published by Lead Publishing, and of course, it's also available on in the US, in the United States of America, so everyone can buy that. But above all, you gotta use that, you gotta practice that, you gotta walk that. Otherwise, it makes no sense, right? It's meaningless. It's meaningful. There is no meaning. So how to get in touch with you, Paula? How can people can collaborate with you if someone wants to hire you, if someone wants to invite you to speak, to do a webinar, or to involve you in projects or stuff like that?
Yep, perfect. So I do executive coaching. I do a lot of that. I've got a signature program called
Mm-hmm.
Pure Power Leadership, and I do advisory work.
Mm-hmm.
And so vantagepointsconsulting.com is my
Mm-hmm.
website.
Yep.
And I also am pretty active on Instagram. I love a bit of Instagram. So I put a lot of fresh, original content on there, which follows the kind of themes in the book. And that is at Vantage Points Consulting.
Cool, fantastic. It's been super fascinating to catch up again. Published by Lead, Vantage Points is now available on Amazon. I do want to greet and thank also our listeners and followers for being with us, supporting us. So if you really enjoy this episode of Books and Friends TV, simply subscribe our YouTube channel. We'll be back soon with another super Q&A with another super special guest order on May 25. We're going to be joined by Professor Tom Heisman from HBS Harvard Business School for a meaningful conversation on all the things startups, why startups fail. So it is unmissable, very huge. Stick around and of course stay tuned. Once again, thank you very much for watching and following. We leave you with this quote: leadership is not a position or something we can impose on others. Paula Leach. Thank you very much, Paula.
Thank you, David. Thank
See you soon. Get you soon. Bye. 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 Bye from Books and Friends. Bye. Bye from David Sccialpi. Bye. Cheers.